Jiwoo Park stood at the back of the Great Hall and tried not to feel small. The ceiling stretched high above him, carved from dark stone. Golden lights hung from chains, casting long shadows across the floor. Around him, alien instructors filled the space. They were huge. They were loud. And they were not happy he was there. A Valkorian instructor walked past. The creature stood 8 feet tall, covered in golden fur with eyes like burning coals. It looked down at Jiwoo and made a sound deep in its throat. Not quite a growl. Not quite a laugh. Something worse. Jiwoo kept his face calm. He had practiced this expression for weeks on the transport ship. Calm. Professional. Like he belonged here. Like he wasn't the only human among 87 alien warriors who could break him in half without trying. Commander Reth stood at the front of the hall. The massive Valkorian scarred face told stories of 100 battles. His voice boomed across the stone chamber. Today we begin the selection ceremony. The Cubs will choose their trainers. This is tradition. This is honor. This is the way of the Warborn. Jiwoo noticed Reth did not look at him when he said this. In fact, Reth had barely looked at him since he arrived 3 days ago. The message was clear. Jiwoo was here because someone in the human government had made a deal. He was here because politics demanded it. He was not here because anyone wanted him. The doors at the far end opened. Young aliens walked in. Cubs, they called them. Though many were bigger than adult humans, they moved in a line, eyes forward, trying to look brave. Jiwoo recognized the species from his studies. Valkorians with their golden fur and sharp claws, Draken with scales that shimmered green and blue, Threxians with their insect bodies and 4 arms. Others he had only read about in files. The instructors around him began to move. They stepped forward, making themselves visible. A Valkorian instructor named Kale roared. The sound echoed off the walls. Other instructors joined in, each showing their strength. They flexed their muscles. They showed their scars. They demonstrated fighting moves, quick and violent. Jiwoo did not move. He stayed at the back. He stayed quiet. Instead, he watched the Cubs. Really watched them. He saw how one small Valkorian female kept her head down, trying not to be noticed. He saw a Draken male shiver slightly, even though the hall was warm. He saw a Threxian who stood apart from the others of its kind, unusual for a species that preferred groups. The selection began. Commander Reth called the first Cub forward. A large Valkorian male walked to the instructor line. He stopped in front of Kale, the loudest and most aggressive. The Cub bowed. Kale placed a hand on the Cub's shoulder. The first selection was made. More Cubs came forward. Each walked to an instructor of their own species. This was tradition. Valkorians trained with Valkorians, Draken with Draken. The pattern held through 15 selections. Jiwoo expected nothing different. Why would any Cub choose the small human at the back? Then the small Valkorian female was called. Her name was Vera. She walked forward slowly. Her eyes moved across the line of instructors. She looked at Kale, who stood with 3 Cubs already chosen. She looked at other Valkorian trainers, their fur gleaming, their muscles impressive. Then Vara turned. She looked directly at Jiwoo. For a long moment their eyes met. Jiwoo saw something in her expression. Uncertainty, hope, the look of someone who had been overlooked too many times. He gave her a small nod. Nothing dramatic. Just acknowledgement. Vara walked past all the Valkorian instructors. She walked past the Draken and Threxian trainers. She walked all the way to the back of the hall. She stopped in front of Jiwoo. Then she sat down at his feet. The hall went silent. Completely silent. Jiwoo could hear his own heartbeat. He could hear Vara's breathing. Every instructor stared. Commander Reth's mouth hung open. Kale looked like he had been slapped. "This is not acceptable," Reth said. His voice was quiet now, which somehow made it more dangerous. "Vara, return to the line. Choose a proper instructor." Vara did not move. "Commander," she said, her young voice steady. "The rules say we choose." "I have chosen. But why?" Kale demanded. He stepped forward, his hands forming fists. "Why choose the human? He is weak. He has no claws, no fangs. He cannot teach you to be strong." Vera looked up at Kale. Then she looked at Jiwoo. "He is the only one who looked at me," she said simply. "Really looked. Not through me, at me. All of you showed your strength." He showed attention. Jiwoo felt something shift in the room. Other Cubs were looking at him now. Really looking. The Draken male who had been shivering, the independent Threxian. More. He saw recognition in their eyes. The recognition of being seen. The next cub was called Kren the Draken. He walked forward. Jiwoo noticed his scales were duller than the others, a sign of cold stress. Kren looked at the Draken instructor. Then he looked at Vera sitting calmly at Jiwoo's feet. He made his choice. He walked to Jiwoo, then came Zix, the Threxian, then a small Valkorian male, then others. Cubs from different species breaking every tradition. They walked past their own kind. They sat with the human. Commander Reth tried to maintain order, but his voice had lost its certainty. Kale's face had gone from angry to pale. Other instructors muttered among themselves. This had never happened before. Never in the history of the Warborn program. When the selection finally ended, 23 cubs sat near Jiwoo. 7 different species, more than any other instructor had chosen them. More than Kale, the Academy's pride. More than anyone expected. Jiwoo looked down at the young faces watching him. Fear touched his heart. These cubs had placed their trust in him. Their futures depended on what he taught them. If he failed, they would suffer for choosing the outsider. But he did not let the fear show. Instead, he smiled. A small, warm smile. Thank you for choosing me, he said quietly. I promise you this. I will see each of you. Every day, I will know your names, your struggles, your strengths. You will not be invisible to me. Farah looked up at him and smiled back. Commander Reth stood at the front of the hall. His claws scraped against the stone floor. The selection is complete, he announced. Training begins tomorrow. In 3 months, all cubs will be tested. Those who fail will be expelled. Their trainers will be disgraced. He looked directly at Jiwoo. Let us see if your choices were wise. As the hall emptied, Kale walked past Jiwoo. He stopped, leaned close. You have made a mistake, human, he said, his voice low and threatening. These cubs will fail, and everyone will know it was because they chose you. I will make certain of it. Jiwoo met his eyes calmly. He said nothing. Sometimes silence was stronger than words. After Kale left, Jiwoo looked down at his new students. They waited patiently, these young aliens who had broken tradition for him. He took a breath. The real work would begin tomorrow. Tonight he had to figure out how to train 7 different species using methods none of them had ever seen before. But for now, he simply said, Let's go meet your new training ground. Follow me, and they did. The training ground Jiwoo received was the smallest at the academy. It sat at the edge of the complex, far from the main areas. The equipment was old. The ground was rocky and uneven. Other instructors had modern facilities with climate control and soft training mats. Jiwoo had rocks and broken targets. His cubs did not complain. They stood in a group waiting. 23 young aliens from 7 species. They had chosen him. Now they wanted to know what came next. Jiwoo looked at them for a long moment. In the distance, he could hear other training groups. Instructors yelling, cubs roaring, the sound of bodies hitting the ground. Traditional training, loud and aggressive. Sit down, Jiwoo said quietly. The cubs looked confused but obeyed. They sat on the rocky ground, still watching him. Close your eyes, he continued. Breathe. Feel your body. Notice your heartbeat. Notice where you hold tension. From across the training field, Jiwoo heard laughter. He looked up. Kale stood there with his group of cubs. The Valkorian instructor was smirking. He said something to his students. They laughed too. Then they went back to their combat drills, hitting each other hard. Jiwoo ignored them. He continued with his lesson. Breathing exercises, stretching, learning to move with control instead of just power. The cubs followed his instructions, though some looked uncertain. After an hour, a human woman approached. She was small like Jiwoo, with sharp eyes behind thin glasses. Hana Cho, the xenobiologist assigned to help him. She carried data tablets filled with information about alien anatomy. You started without combat training, Hana observed. It was not a question. They need foundations first, Jiwoo said. Each species has different physical needs. Valkorians have incredible strength but tire quickly. Draken are cold-blooded and need temperature management. Threxians have 4 arms but poor balance. I need to understand them before I can train them. Hana nodded. The other instructors think you are wasting time. There is talk already. Let them talk. Over the next 2 weeks, Jiwoo worked with each cub individually. He learned their names and their stories. Vara, the small Valkorian, had been the weakest of her litter. Her siblings were all bigger and stronger. Kren, the Draken, had been sick as a young child. His temperature regulation never fully recovered. Zix, the Threxian, had shown independence unusual for the hive mind species. This made other Threxians uncomfortable. Each cub had been overlooked. Each had been considered less than others. Jiwoo understood this feeling. He had felt it many times in his own life. He designed training specifically for each one. For Vara, exercises that built endurance rather than raw strength. For Kren, techniques to conserve energy and recognize temperature stress. For Zix, movements that used all four arms in coordination. The other instructors mocked his methods openly. At instructor meetings, Kale would make jokes about the human teaching breathing to warriors. Others would laugh. Commander Reth said nothing, but his silence felt like agreement. Vara began to doubt. One evening, she stayed after training while the others left. "Instructor Jiwoo," she said hesitantly, "my littermates are learning to fight. Real fighting. They spar every day. They are getting better at combat." "We just stretch and breathe." Jiwoo sat down beside her. "Tell me, Vara, when your littermates spar, how many get injured?" She thought about it. "Most days at least 2 or 3 need medical attention. And in our training? None," she admitted. "I am building foundations," Jiwoo explained. "Your littermates are building on sand. They push hard now, but their bodies are not ready. They will break. You are building on stone. It takes longer, but it lasts. Trust the process. Trust me." Vara looked at him for a long moment. Then she nodded. "I trust you." The test came in the 4th week. Commander Reth announced an environmental simulation. All cubs would cross a harsh desert environment. It was a standard test used for generations. Speed mattered, but survival mattered more. The simulation was brutal. The artificial sun beat down with intense heat. The sand burned. Water was limited. Cubs trained the traditional way charged forward with aggressive speed. They wanted to finish quickly, to show their strength. Jiwoo's cubs moved differently. They walked steadily, conserving energy. They breathed the way he taught them, keeping their bodies calm. They recognized signs of heat stress and rested when needed. Kren, the cold-blooded Draken, used the techniques Jiwoo specifically taught him. He found shade. He regulated his breathing. He did not panic. Halfway through the course, traditionally trained cubs started collapsing. The heat and exhaustion overwhelmed them. Medical teams rushed in with cooling equipment and hydration. Kale's prize students, the ones who started fastest, were among the first to fall. Jiwoo's cubs kept moving, steady, calm. They reached the finish line with the best times. More importantly, none needed medical attention. Kren finished first overall, the Draken who had been considered weak, the one with poor temperature control. He stood at the finish line, tired but healthy, while others were carried to medical beds. The hall was silent during the results announcement. Commander Reth read the names. 23 cubs from Jiwoo's group in the top 30 finishes. 0 medical interventions. 0 failures. Kyle stood among the other instructors, his face dark with anger and shame. His cubs had failed. Some were still in medical care. The humans' cubs had succeeded completely. After the announcement, other cubs began approaching Jiwoo. They asked questions about his training. Some requested transfer to his group. Commander Reth denied all transfers. The rules were clear. Once chosen, cubs stayed with their instructor. But the requests kept coming. That evening, Jiwoo found an unexpected visitor at his quarters. A tall figure with insect features and 4 arms. Sub-Queen Nexara of the Threxians. She ruled the Threxian contingent at the academy. "Instructor Park," she said. Her voice had a strange musical quality. "I have observed your methods with interest. You train individuals, not drones. This is unusual. This is effective. I wish to document your techniques for the Threxian collective." Jiwoo felt surprised. This was the first official recognition of his work. "I would be honored, Sub-Queen. You have created something new here," Nexara continued. "The other instructors fear this. Fear makes creatures dangerous. Be careful, Instructor Park." After she left, Jiwoo stood alone. He thought about her warning. He thought about Kale's hatred. He thought about the cubs who trusted him. The desert test was just the beginning. Harder challenges would come. The next morning, Kyle was waiting at the training ground. His cubs stood behind him, still recovering from the desert test. Jiwoo's cubs arrived and stopped, sensing tension. You were lucky, human, Kale said loudly. Other instructors gathered to watch. The desert test was about endurance, not combat. Let us see how your methods work in real fighting. I challenge you to an exhibition match. My best student against yours. 3 weeks from now. The entire academy will watch. Jiwoo looked at Vara. She stood straighter, meeting his eyes. He saw her decision already made. She wanted this fight. She needed to prove herself. Not just to others, but to herself. We accept, Jiwoo said calmly. Kyle smiled. It was not a kind smile. Excellent. My student Dravok will face your Vara. He is the largest and strongest Valkorian cub in the program. This will be educational for everyone. After Kale left, Vara approached Jiwoo. Can I win? She asked quietly. Jiwoo looked at her. This small Valkorian who had been overlooked her whole life. Who had chosen him when no one expected it. Who trusted him completely. Yes, he said, but not by being stronger than Dravok. By being smarter. By fighting your way, not his. We have 3 weeks. Let us begin. The exhibition match became the only thing anyone talked about. In the dining halls, cubs whispered about it. Instructors placed bets. Even the support staff had opinions. Everyone knew the stakes. If Vara lost, it would prove the humans' methods were worthless. If she won, everything would change. Jiwoo spent every training session with Vara. They did not practice aggressive attacks. Instead, they worked on reading movement, understanding momentum, learning to redirect force instead of meeting it head-on. Vara learned to see patterns in how larger opponents moved. She learned patience. Dravok will be faster than you expect, Jiwoo explained. Large does not always mean slow, but large means he has more weight to move, more momentum to control. This becomes a weakness if you know how to use it. Vara listened carefully. She practiced the movements over and over. Her body learned the techniques until they became automatic. Dodge, redirect, conserve energy. Never meet strength with strength. The other cubs in Jiwoo's group became invested too. They helped however they could. Kren practiced with Vara, using his different movement style to prepare her for unpredictability. Six used all 4 arms to come at her from multiple angles. They became a team united across species. Meanwhile, politics swirled around them. Taejun Lee, the human diplomat, visited Jiwoo in his quarters one evening. The older man looked tired and stressed. Do you understand what depends on this match? Taejun asked. This is not just about one cub. This is about humanity's reputation in the Empire. If Vara loses badly, they will use it as proof that humans cannot train warriors. Doors will close for generations. Jiwoo kept his voice calm. I understand. But adding pressure will not help Vara. She needs confidence, not fear. Confidence will not stop Dravok's claws, Taejun said bitterly. Then he sighed. I'm sorry. I know you are doing your best. I just wish the stakes were lower. After he left, Jiwoo sat in the dark. He thought about his younger brother, the training accident that took his life. The instructor who had pushed too hard, demanded too much, valued results over safety. That tragedy had shaped everything about how Jiwoo taught. He would not repeat those mistakes. Not for politics. Not for anyone. Hana brought troubling news 2 days before the match. She found Jiwoo at the training ground after everyone else had left. I checked the medical records, she said quietly. Kyle has been giving Dravok supplements. They are technically legal, but barely. They increase aggression and reduce pain sensitivity. Dravok will not know when to stop. He will not feel normal limits. Jiwoo felt cold anger. That is dangerous. For both fighters. Should we report it? Hana asked. No evidence that would hold, Jiwoo said. And making accusations now looks like fear. We adjust our strategy. Vara needs to know what she faces. That evening, Jiwoo told Vara everything. About the supplements. About the increased danger. He gave her the choice to withdraw. No one would blame her. Vara's eyes hardened. No, I fight. Dravok being enhanced does not change the plan. It makes me more careful, not scared. I trust your training. The night before the match, Vara could not sleep. She found Jiwoo sitting outside looking at the alien stars. She sat beside him silently. Are you afraid? Jiwoo asked. Yes, she admitted. Good, he said. Fear means you understand the stakes. Courage is not the absence of fear. It is choosing to act despite it. You have already shown more courage than most warriors ever will. Match day arrived. The combat arena was packed. Every seat filled. Instructors stood along the walls. Cubs pressed against the barriers. Even Commander Reth sat in the place of honor, his expression unreadable. Dravok entered first. He was massive, even for a Valkorian. His golden fur gleamed. His muscles rippled. He roared, and the sound echoed through the arena. The crowd roared back. Kale stood in his corner, smiling with confidence. Then Vara entered. She looked small next to Dravok, smaller than anyone expected. She did not roar. She did not try to look intimidating. She simply walked to her corner with calm determination. Jiwoo waited there. Remember, Jiwoo said quietly, this is not about strength. This is about endurance and intelligence. Make him work. Make him chase. Let his size become his enemy. Vara nodded. Her fear was still there, but so was her resolve. The match began. Dravok charged immediately. No hesitation. No strategy. Pure aggressive power. Vara dodged to the side. His claws missed by inches. The crowd gasped. Dravok spun and attacked again. Vara rolled away. Again he missed. This pattern continued for 5 minutes. Dravok attacking. Vara evading. She did not try to counterattack yet. She was studying him, learning his patterns. Waiting. The crowd grew restless. Some shouted for Vara to fight back. Others mocked her defensive style. Kale looked frustrated. This was not the quick victory he expected. 10 minutes passed. Dravok's attacks remained powerful, but his breathing grew heavier. The supplements made him aggressive but did not give him unlimited energy. His movements became slightly slower, more predictable. 15 minutes. Dravok began making mistakes, overextending, losing balance slightly. The crowd fell quieter. They were seeing something unexpected. The small fighter was outlasting the giant. 20 minutes. Dravok's fur was soaked with sweat. His roars became gasps. He charged again, but now his fatigue was obvious. Vara dodged easily. For the first time, she counterattacked. A quick strike to his extended arm. Not powerful enough to hurt, but showing she could hit him when she chose. The crowd erupted. This was a real fight now. Vara began using everything Jiwoo taught her. She redirected Dravok's charges. She used his momentum against him. When he pushed, she pulled. When he pulled, she pushed. His strength became his weakness. 25 minutes. Dravok could barely stand. The supplement still drove him to attack, but his body could not support it anymore. Kale shouted from the corner, ordering him to finish it. But Dravok had nothing left. Vara remained calm, still controlled, her breathing steady. She had trained for endurance. This was her fight now. Dravok made one final desperate charge. Everything he had left in one attack. Vara waited until the last moment. Then she stepped aside and used a technique Jiwoo had drilled into her countless times. She caught Dravok's extended arm, used his momentum, redirected his entire body weight. He flew past her, unable to stop himself. He crashed out of the combat circle. Silence. Complete silence. Then the crowd exploded, not with polite applause, with genuine shock and excitement. The small cub had defeated the giant, not through luck. Through skill and endurance and intelligence. Vara stood in the center of the arena, breathing hard but still standing strong. She looked at Jiwoo. He smiled and nodded. She had done it. Commander Reth stood. The arena fell silent. Victory to Vara of Instructor Park's training group, he announced. A legitimate victory using legitimate tactics. He looked directly at Kale as he said this. Kale's face showed both rage and shame. Later in the medical bay, a doctor examined Dravok. The supplements had pushed him beyond safe limits. He would recover, but he needed rest. Kale tried to leave quickly, but Commander Reth stopped him. There would be questions about the training methods used. Jiwoo found Vara surrounded by other cubs. They congratulated her. Cubs from other training groups, other species. They asked questions about her techniques, about Jiwoo's training. The interest was genuine and widespread. That evening, 47 cubs submitted formal requests to transfer to Jiwoo's training group. Commander Reth called an emergency meeting of all instructors. Something had to change. The humans' methods were proving effective beyond anyone's expectations. The real challenge was just beginning. Commander Reth made his announcement 3 days after the exhibition match. The academy would split into 2 divisions. Traditional training would continue under current instructors. A new experimental division would follow human methodology. Jiwoo would lead it. But there was a condition. He had to train other instructors in his methods. The first instructor training session was hostile. 20 instructors attended because they had to, not because they wanted to. They sat with crossed arms and dark expressions. Most were species Jiwoo had never even spoken to before. All of them had trained warriors for years using methods passed down through generations. Now a human was supposed to teach them something new. Jiwoo stood before them. He felt their anger like heat from a fire. But he kept his voice calm and professional. Thank you for coming. I know this is difficult. I am not here to say your methods are wrong. They have created successful warriors for centuries. I am offering additional tools, different approaches for different situations and different cubs. A Draken instructor named Torvin raised his hand. Unlike the others, his expression showed curiosity rather than anger. You begin with breathing exercises. Why? Combat requires action, not meditation. Breathing controls the nervous system, Jiwoo explained. A warrior who cannot control their breathing cannot control their fear or their energy. Everything builds from this foundation. Calm breath leads to calm mind. Calm mind leads to better decisions in combat. Kale, forced to attend as punishment for the supplement incident, laughed bitterly. Philosophy does not win fights. Strength wins fights. Speed wins fights. Your cub won once through luck. Let us see if it continues. Jiwoo did not respond to the provocation. He simply continued the lesson. He demonstrated techniques, explained principles, answered questions from those willing to listen. Some instructors like Torvin paid attention. Most did not. Over the next month, Jiwoo worked with Hana to create documentation. They wrote detailed training manuals. Every technique explained step by step. Every principle backed by data. They included adaptations for different species, accounting for different anatomy and capabilities. It was exhausting work but necessary. Jiwoo could not train every cub himself. His methods needed to spread. The experimental division began showing results. Cubs transferred from traditional training improved quickly under the new methods. Their injury rates dropped dramatically. Their endurance increased. More importantly, they showed better decision-making in complex scenarios. They did not just react with aggression. They thought, adapted, and chose appropriate responses. But not all instructors followed the methods correctly. Some tried to mix old and new approaches without understanding either. Others deliberately misapplied techniques, hoping to prove them wrong. Kale was the worst. Assigned to teach a group in the experimental division, he pushed cubs too hard and modified exercises. He claimed to follow Jiwoo's program but ignored the safety principles. He wanted Jiwoo's methods to fail. The disaster came during an endurance training session. Kale pushed his cubs through extreme exercises without proper rest periods. He ignored signs of exhaustion. 3 cubs collapsed. 1 suffered serious injury. Medical teams rushed in. Kale immediately blamed the experimental methods. This is what happens when we follow soft human training, he announced loudly. These cubs were not prepared for real warrior exercises. The humans' methods are dangerous. An investigation began immediately. Commander Reth interviewed all instructors. He reviewed training logs. He examined the injured cubs and questioned them directly. Jiwoo cooperated fully, providing all documentation. He knew the truth would emerge. The cubs told their story. Kale had ignored the training manual. He had not implemented rest periods. He had pushed them beyond recommended limits. He had done everything the human methods specifically warned against. This was not the experimental program failing. This was deliberate sabotage. During the formal hearing, Sub-Queen Nexara presented critical evidence. She had been documenting everything in the Threxian contingent. Her data was thorough and undeniable. Cubs following proper experimental methods showed 60% reduction in injuries compared to traditional training. Performance metrics were higher across all categories except immediate aggression. The question, Nexara stated in her musical voice, is what the Empire values. Do we want warriors who react with immediate violence? Or soldiers who think, adapt, and survive? The human methods create the second type. The data is clear. Traditional instructors argued that reduced aggression meant weakness. They pointed to combat scores where traditionally trained cubs sometimes performed better in pure fighting scenarios. The debate became philosophical. What did the military actually need? Commander Reth spent days reviewing everything. He visited training sessions unannounced. He watched both divisions carefully. He interviewed cubs from all groups. Finally, he called a meeting of all Academy leadership. I have made my decision, Reth announced. His voice was tired but firm. The experimental division will become the primary training methodology for all new cubs entering the Academy. Traditional methods will be maintained for advanced students who choose that path. But our foundation will change. The room erupted. Some instructors cheered. Others shouted protests. Kale looked like he might attack someone. Reth raised his hand for silence. This decision comes from evidence, not preference, Reth continued. Lower injury rates mean more warriors reach graduation. Better decision-making means more warriors survive their first combat. Improved endurance means longer operational capability. These are not soft qualities. These are force multipliers. He looked directly at Jiwoo. However, Instructor Park, this is not complete victory. The High Command has learned about these changes. Supreme Marshal Kathros is coming to personally evaluate the program. She will determine whether this revolution continues or ends. She arrives in 2 weeks. After the meeting, Jiwoo walked alone through the training grounds. Supreme Marshal Kathros was legendary, the most traditional military leader in Valkorian history. If she disapproved, everything would collapse. All the progress would be lost. Torvin found him there. The Draken instructor had become Jiwoo's first real ally among the alien teachers. You look worried, Torvin observed. Kathros built her reputation on ferocity, Jiwoo said. Everything I teach goes against that philosophy. Perhaps, Torvin said thoughtfully. Or perhaps ferocity and intelligence are not opposites. I spent 30 years teaching one way. I was certain it was the only way. You showed me I was wrong. If an old Draken can learn new wisdom, maybe a legendary marshal can too. And if she cannot? Torvin was quiet for a moment. Then we trust that we did the right thing regardless of the outcome. We trained these cubs well. We reduced injuries. We improved performance. We gave them tools to survive. That matters even if the system rejects it. Jiwoo found his cubs gathered at their usual meeting spot that evening. They had heard about Kathros's visit. Vara spoke for the group. We will show her what we have learned. We will prove the training works. You gave us a chance when no one else would. Now we give you one back. The other cubs agreed. 23 voices from 7 species. United in purpose. Jiwoo felt pride and fear in equal measure. These young warriors had already exceeded every expectation. But would it be enough for a marshal who valued only traditional strength? That night, Jiwoo worked late preparing documentation for Kathros's review. Every training session recorded. Every technique explained. Every result documented with data. Hana helped organizing information clearly. They worked until exhaustion forced them to stop. You have created something important here, Hana said as they finished. Regardless of what happens, you changed how these cubs see themselves. You changed how they train. Some things cannot be undone even if the system tries. Jiwoo nodded, but he knew that system-level change mattered. Individual success was good. Institutional transformation was necessary. For his methods to truly help, they needed official support. They needed Kathros's approval. 2 weeks felt both too long and too short. Training continued. Cubs improved. Documentation piled up. And everyone waited for the Supreme Marshal's arrival. The future of everything they had built depended on what happened next. Supreme Marshal Kathros arrived without ceremony. No grand entrance. No roaring announcement. She simply appeared at the academy one morning, accompanied by 2 silent guards. She was smaller than Jiwoo expected. Older. Her golden fur had gone silver in patches. Scars covered her arms and face. Her eyes were sharp and measured everything. Commander Reth greeted her formally. She cut him off mid-sentence. No speeches. I am here to observe, not to listen to presentations. Show me everything. Both divisions. All training methods. I want complete access for 3 days, Kathros observed. She attended traditional training sessions. She watched experimental division classes. She sat in on instructor meetings. She reviewed medical records and performance data. She did not interrupt. She did not comment. She simply watched with those sharp, analytical eyes. Jiwoo found her presence unsettling. She attended his training sessions, standing at the back like a statue. When he taught breathing techniques, she watched. When cubs practiced defensive movements, she watched. When he corrected form with gentle guidance, she watched. Her expression revealed nothing. On the 4th day, Kathros requested something unexpected. She wanted to speak with cubs directly. No instructors present. Just her and the young warriors. She spent hours in private conversations. Vara was called first. She returned looking thoughtful but would not discuss what was said. On the 5th day, Kathros announced her evaluation method. A comprehensive combat simulation, experimental division cubs against traditionally trained cubs, not a simple arena fight. A complex scenario with multiple objectives, requiring 48 hours of sustained operation. Teams would face environmental challenges, tactical problems, and combat situations. Both groups would compete simultaneously in separate zones but under identical conditions. The Academy mobilized immediately. The simulation was massive. Instructors prepared their teams. Cubs trained intensely. Everyone understood the stakes. This would determine the future of the entire program. Jiwoo gathered his cubs the night before. Remember everything you have learned. Trust your training. Trust each other. Most importantly, remember that winning is not just about defeating the opponent. It is about completing objectives efficiently while keeping your team safe. That is what real warriors do. The simulation began at dawn. Both teams entered their designated zones. The environment was harsh. Desert heat during the day, freezing cold at night, limited resources, hidden obstacles, combat drones programmed to attack, multiple objectives scattered across the terrain that had to be secured in specific order. Traditional cubs approached it aggressively. They charged objectives with maximum force. They destroyed drones efficiently. They moved fast and hit hard. Their strength was impressive, but they used resources quickly. Some cubs pushed too hard and needed medical extraction. Their team size decreased as the hours passed. Experimental division cubs moved differently. They planned before acting. They conserved resources. They avoided unnecessary combat when objectives could be achieved through stealth or clever routes. When they fought smart. They supported each other across species lines. Vara led with calm authority. Kren managed their environmental challenges. Zix coordinated movements with precision. By the 24-hour mark, both teams had secured similar numbers of objectives. Traditional cubs had raw point advantages from combat. Experimental cubs had efficiency advantages and full team strength intact. Kathros observed everything through monitoring systems, her expression still unreadable. The second day brought harder challenges. The simulation introduced unexpected problems. Equipment failures, environmental hazards, objectives that required cooperation and creative problem-solving, not just force. This was where differences became clear. Traditional cubs struggled with adaptation. Their training emphasized direct solutions. When problems required indirect approaches, they tried to force answers. Some succeeded through sheer determination. Others failed because force was not the solution. Experimental cubs adapted quickly. They analyzed problems. They tried different approaches. They learned from failures and adjusted. Their training had taught them to think, not just react. When one method did not work, they tried another. They supported struggling teammates instead of leaving them behind. The simulation ended at the 48-hour mark. Both teams extracted to base camp. Traditional cubs had completed 12 of 15 objectives. Experimental cubs had completed 13. The difference was small. But the experimental division had 0 medical extractions. All cubs finished healthy. Traditional training had 6 extractions. Good warriors removed from operation due to exhaustion or injury. The debriefing was tense. Instructors from both sides argued about what the results meant. Traditional supporters emphasized combat victories. Experimental supporters emphasized efficiency and sustainability. Each side claimed victory based on their preferred metrics. Kathros listened to all arguments. Then she raised her hand for silence. I will now conduct final interviews. After that, I will announce my judgment. She called for Vara first. She looked emotional but composed. Other cubs were called. Then instructors. Then support staff. Kathros was thorough. She wanted every perspective. Finally, she called Jiwoo. They sat in a small room. Just the two of them. Kathros studied him for a long moment before speaking. Your student Vara said something interesting, Kathros began. I asked her what makes a true warrior. She said it is not being unafraid. It is choosing to act despite fear. It is protecting others despite personal cost. It is improving yourself despite comfortable stagnation. Where did she learn this? I never taught her those exact words, Jiwoo admitted. I taught her to think, to understand herself. She developed that wisdom herself. Kathros nodded slowly. That is the difference. Your training creates thinkers. Traditional training creates reactors. Both have value. Both are needed. But the Empire has focused only on one type for too long. The next morning, the entire academy assembled. Cathro stood before them. Her voice carried authority that needed no amplification. I have made my decision. The experimental methods will not replace traditional training. They will be integrated alongside it. Cubs will be evaluated individually. Some will thrive under traditional methods. Others will excel under experimental approaches. We will match training to the warrior, not force warriors to match one training style. She paused. Additionally, I am mandating that all Imperial military instructors complete a human methodology course. The galaxy is changing. Conflicts require more than savage dominance. We need warriors who think beyond the next battle. Instructor Park will design the curriculum. The announcement sent shockwaves through the assembly. This was not just academy reform. This was empire-wide change. Jiwoo felt the weight of it. Later, Cathros met privately with Jiwoo and Commander Reth. I am promoting you, Reth, to high command. The Empire needs leaders who can accept change. As for you, Instructor Park, I am offering you a position designing training protocols for the entire Imperial military. Jiwoo took a breath. I am honored, Marshal, but I must decline. I am most effective working directly with Cubs, not from a bureaucratic position. I want to remain here at the Academy as lead instructor. Cathro studied him. Then she smiled slightly. A wise choice. Leaders who understand their strengths are rare. You will stay here as lead experimental instructor and advisory consultant. Your influence will spread through the instructors you train, not administrative orders. That may be more effective anyway. Months passed. The Academy transformed. The next selection ceremony was different. Jiwoo did not stand at the back. He stood among respected instructors. When Cubs made their choices, the distribution was balanced. Some chose traditional methods. Others chose experimental. Both were respected. Both were valued. Vera graduated top of her class. She became the youngest instructor in Academy history, teaching a hybrid approach that combined traditional strength with experimental intelligence. Other Cubs from that first group went on to distinguished careers. Kren led mixed species units. Zix became an advisor on individual development within collective societies. Jiwoo trained hundreds of instructors over the following years. His methods spread throughout the empire. Military casualty rates decreased. Diplomatic relations improved as warriors trained in patience made better peacekeepers. The changes were slow but real. 5 years after that first selection ceremony, Jiwoo stood watching a new group of Cubs complete their first team exercise. Different species working together seamlessly. Learning together. Growing together, Hana joined him. You changed the galaxy, she said quietly. Jiwoo shook his head. I showed them a different path. They chose to walk it. That is what matters. Not that I had the answers, but that they were willing to learn. He watched the Cubs celebrate their success. Young aliens from dozens of species, united by shared experience and mutual respect. This was humanity's real contribution to the galaxy. Not technology, not military might, but the simple idea that strength comes in many forms, and the strongest warriors are those who never stop learning. That night, under alien stars, Jiwoo smiled. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new Cubs to train, new lessons to teach. But tonight he was content knowing that the work mattered. That lives were better because of HFY.